Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. It is the time of fashion. It is Black History Month. It is a time when we are celebrating for lots of reasons. You know, I love fashion. That's my first love in my professional life. And I was so excited to attend the 10th anniversary celebration of something called the Black Dress Exhibit. I was there 10 years ago when this project was introduced, and it has grown and is flourishing so beautifully. So, right now, there is an exhibit highlighting the contributions of Black designers and challenging the lack of representation in the fashion industry. This is no surprise for anyone who's paid attention to fashion, but it really is documented here. It was curated by Professor Adrienne Jones, who teaches at the Pratt Institute here in New York City. And this exhibit, as I mentioned, is the second of its kind. And I know she's already told me it's not poised to be less. It's on that ramp. Professor Jones is a force to be reckoned with. I've known her for a long time. She is a pioneer, a visionary, and a truly hard worker. She is a distinguished fashion educator, designer, speaker, and advocate for diversity in the fashion industry. She's an award-winning educator, and with more than 30 years at Pratt Institute, where she holds the honor of being the first Black woman to achieve full-time tenured status at the school. No easy feat. So Professor Jones is joining us today to share all about her journey, the evolution of the Black Dress Exhibit and Conversation series, and her insights for the future of fashion. Please join me in welcoming Professor Jones now.
Hello, Harriet. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction.
Oh, congratulations to you. This is a lot of work. I remember 10 years ago, you had this vision, and I think it was our mutual friend, Walter Green, who introduced me to you back then. And we honor him this time of year, especially. He recently passed, but he was a champion of Blacks in the fashion industry and covered absolutely everything that people of African descent were doing, and was very excited about this project that you were developing. So, can you tell me what was the impetus to create the Black Dress Exhibit 10 years ago?
There were a lot of things that mixed into that pot that got that pot boiling, so to speak. Um, One was the sheer lack of diversity that we were all experiencing at the time. Um, and there were two things that were very important to me. One was my godmother, Clara Branch, who
Mhm.
had taught and worked at FIT um, back after uh, Dr. King was assassinated. She started the Soul Club, and that blossomed into the Soul Fashion Show. And it was all a way to gather together the uh, the students at the college, make sure they had all the accessories that they needed, all of the books that they needed, whatever they needed to get through their classes, but also to teach them about the legacy of Dr. King and those who had come before them. And she was very vocal with this. And I don't think any of us who came through FIT at that time could have made it without her.
So let me
Um,
ask you something because I think many people won't be aware of this. The Soul Club, what exactly was that? And could you just explain it a little bit more?
so again, after Dr. King had been
Mhm.
assassinated, she felt the need to bring together the Black students in a way that would support them.
Mm.
So it was not only learning about those who had come before us, but also a support system. So she had this huge office in FIT, and you could go there and get your muslin, you can get your books, depending on whatever your major was. She made sure that all of those implements were there for
Yeah.
us. And then from there, it went into the Soul Fashion Show, which highlighted young designers, some of which were still students in school, and models. So it was a combination of um, designers in the industry as well as student designers, people who had just graduated. And the same thing with models. There were some models that were already working professionally, and then some of us, like I was a student model and designer.
Mm.
And this also helped to raise funds for the Soul Club. So
Mm.
there were so many of us that went through that and learned so much about the industry through her. So
That's exciting. That's really exciting, and I think a lot of people aren't aware of it, so thank you for sharing that. It was a safe space to land
it
with a
was
lot of
definitely a safe
mentors.
space, definitely a
Mhm.
safe space. And, we got to know each other being in different departments at FIT. Um, so that was a place for all of us to actually come together and see each other. I was a design major, there were pattern making majors, there were computer graphic majors. So we would all, we might not see each other during the week because of our different schedules, but you knew you were going to run into somebody at Clara Branch's office.
That's fantastic, and so that stayed with you, when you were from
That
leaving college and then going out in your professional life. What was the trigger that reminded you and told you that you needed to do this documentation?
Well, she never left my life.
Okay.
She didn't have children of her own,
Mhm.
and she became my godmother.
Mm.
So we were always in touch. So even after I graduated, you know, it's one thing to learn the information, but it's another thing to actually utilize it when you're in the industry. And you don't learn everything just in class. So I could always pick up the phone and call her and ask her about different things. Um,
And what were you doing when you graduated? What did you do as you built your career?
The minute I graduated, I started working the following week. Industry was very different then than it is now. You had to have a certain skill set. So I worked as the first pattern maker. I ran the sample room. I even went down to Chinatown and did quality control. It was a mixture of everything that they that they needed me to do. Um, so I got a good blend of everything that that
Mhm.
was on the production side. Um, I designed active swimwear um, for swim teams, which is very different from
Mm.
what you do for just your bathing suits. Um, I think I worked in every section as far as designing and pattern making, except for children's wear, bridal wear, and
Mhm.
lingerie. But everything else, I was
Wow.
in at one point or another. Yeah.
And what did you like the most?
What I ended up liking the most was working in skins, leather, suede, and fur.
Mm.
So I got
Which you still do today.
I still do today, yes. Working with private clientele. I'm on hiatus now because this exhibition has taken over my entire life.
So it's a pause. It's a pause
It's a
at the moment.
pause. It is definitely a pause. Um, so as time went on, I was still working with my branch as a designer and a model because the Soul Show started traveling. So we were never really separated from each other. And I always said, okay, I'm gonna stop. And she told us, she says, you can't stop until I stop.
Okay.
She lived in Harlem for years and she had these scrapbooks. And I had come across the scrapbooks being at her house a couple of times. As time passed, um, she developed Alzheimer's,
Mm.
and a family member put her into a nursing home. And the only thing I was looking for was these scrapbooks. I knew how important they were, and I was able to get my hands on them and bring them home and look through them. And
Mm.
I had looked through them over the years, just hanging around her. But at this point, it was just like I thought I had a pretty good knowledge of blacks in the fashion industry. And then just sitting there going through the pages, reminiscing the times that we spent together, I realized how little I
Mm,
actually knew. And I thought, well, okay, if I don't know, there's a whole lot of other people out there who don't know as well.
true.
Um, by this time, I was already teaching at Pratt. And so I knew some people who worked in administration, and I spoke to them about wanting to do something. I said, oh, well, what do you want to do? Well, a couple of months prior to that, there had been another professor there at the time had been given a lecture, and she made the comment that the only thing that Blacks had contributed to the fashion industry on a wide scale was hip hop.
Ooh.
Well,
Ooh.
once
You
my
said that
head
to the wrong person.
and once my head finished spinning, I was just like, okay, so now we've got some
Oh.
work to do. We've got some work to do. So
It's good you were in an educational institution, so you
yes,
understood opportunity to educate, not for your head to blow off.
right, right. So I had to, it's just learning how to change the energy.
Yes.
Um, so putting all that together, I said, you know what, now might be a good time. The Ebony Fashion Fair exhibit had opened in 2013. And so that was in Chicago. So I took a trip out there to see what information I could get, and just talk to people like this is something that's really important to me. Met a lot of great people who were just like, yeah, you should go forward with this, and came back to Pratt, and they didn't jump all over immediately. It was not something um, that they thought was going to fly. Um, I was told by another Black person who worked at Pratt that no one was going to be interested in this. So
Mm.
well, yeah, it
I
happened.
understand, and yeah,
It, it
but you
happened.
persevered.
Absolutely.
So
Um,
given, Adrienne, that it was not necessarily something that folks believed initially would fly, did you self-fund it, or were you able to get any sponsorship from the school?
well, when when you when you present an idea
Mhm.
for an exhibition, um, it goes through the channels. The exhibition director and his team have to look it over. Once they look it over and approve of it, then they have funding for exhibitions.
Okay.
So that's how that process went, and they said, okay, let's see how this works. But almost everything, including the name, um, they fought me on every single step of the way until the night before the opening. Right.
So where did that resilience come from? Was that your godmother saying in the back of your head, "You can do it, you can do it, you can do it"?
Um, so I don't know how many people believe in zodiac signs, but I am an Aries, born of Aries parents. And my godmother, Clara Branch, was also an Aries. We're all born in April. Her and I were actually born on the same day.
Oh my
So
goodness.
so you learn screw those horns in tight and fight for what I've always been taught. If it is something that you believe in, fight. Just go ahead and fight. And I just would not accept no as an answer. If you told me no, I'd hang up, wait a few minutes, and call you back again.
Screw those horns in tight, she said. Hey
Yeah.
guys, this is let me just let folks know where we are. This is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking to Professor Adrienne Jones, who has created the Black Dress Exhibit 2. This is the second one, 10 years after the first. It's called Homage, and it is currently at the Pratt Institute Manhattan Center. Is that what it's called?
It's Pratt Manhattan Gallery,
Okay.
144 West 14th Street.
Pratt Manhattan Gallery. So you screwed those horns in tight. You said we're going to do this thing. The first exhibition, remind us of How big was it? What was the vision, and how was it executed then?
So the first exhibition. Now I teach at the Brooklyn campus where
Right.
we have an exhibition space there, but this was in the Manhattan campus. It was a smaller gallery than what we have now. It was upstairs. And due to budget constraints and also the size of the gallery space, um, we were kind of limited to what we could do. So we highlighted 10 designers, and my co curator was this incredible woman, Paula Coleman, and Walter Green, the fabulous Walter Green, stepped in as the fashion consultant. So the minute that they did that, because everybody asked, "Well, how did you choose?" And I was like, "I did not choose. I left it up. I left it up to Walter and Paula because I knew way too many people,
Mm.
and I didn't want anybody to feel like they were slighted. So it was easier just to pass that buck on to them and then work around who they chose for us.
And back then, this is 10 years ago. Well, there've always been many Black designers, although people don't know it because there are very few who rise up high enough to get that national acclaim. And
Yes.
there are many. We know many Black creatives in fashion for sure, and designers, uh, definitely, but many are unsung heroes. Uh, do you remember who those people were? Who were do you Can you
Okay.
say names?
I'll try and run off the list. I'll start with some of the ones that we asked to come back this time.
Yes.
So we had Byron Lars, Epperson, Samantha Black goes by Sammy B, um, Stephen Burrows, Tracy Reese, Jeffrey Banks, um, and I just watched his show. Um, oh, Harriet, help me.
I really don't know. So I was there, but I don't
Okay,
remember. But anyhow,
right.
that's a good sampling.
Um, Laquan Smith.
Oh, Laquan Smith. Okay.
Yes, yes. And I still feel like I'm leaving out someone, but
People can come to this
10,
exhibition and
10
check
years
it.
ago, 10 years ago, I think I did pretty good.
You did very well. So this time, this exhibition is much bigger. And actually, before we even get to this one, I want to talk to you about something. At some point along the way, you
Yes.
had this scroll. Was that in the first one? I don't,
That was actually in the first one because
okay. Can
we
you
could only,
let me set it? Let me set it up, and then you tell. One of the things that impressed me so much about this, as we're walking in the space, and as Dr. Jones explains, it was a small space, but it was filled with a lot of treasures. So as you go through, and for someone like me who my career in fashion started at Essence, and so we were immersed in the Black experience through fashion. So I knew those designers and knew those stories. As you walk around this space, there was literally a scroll, and on this scroll
three,
there
three
were three
scrolls.
scrolls. There were so many names of Black people who had been prominent in fashion over the years. And I knew a lot. I didn't know that. There were so many names that we didn't know. Can you tell us about that scroll and how it came to be?
Well, the importance of the scrolls came because like I said, we were limited to 10 designers.
Mhm.
And I felt like there was no way that we could just have 10 and not even give mention to all the others. Some came before, some were current during that time period. Um, so I believe there were three scrolls, and the number was odd. It was either 163 names or 167 names, somewhere between that. And that met you as soon as you came into the gallery. And as this being, both of these exhibits are very personal to me.
Mhm.
Um, but I find when you do something that comes from the heart, you just really don't know how that's going to shine on other people. And before people could get fully into the into the gallery, they just stopped there and stood in awe. And all I kept hearing was, I didn't know. I didn't know. And they're
That
literally reading through almost every name on the list. And then they would go into the gallery space. Um, so that struck me because I realized that the work was still necessary. Um, and I remember something that almost tickled me. Somebody came in, and like I said, one of the designers we highlighted was Tracy Reese. And I heard this woman say to me, "Oh my God, I thought Tracy Reese was a white woman."
well, because for those who don't know her name, Tracy Reese is the best known Black female fashion
Yes,
designer probably in the world. I interviewed her recently, and she told me that before she sold her business, because now she has another business, A Hope for Flowers, before she sold the Tracy Reese business, the business was worth had sold more than $1 billion in merchandise,
yes,
which definitely puts her in a different league than anyone else, and because it's so difficult to get to that point. But I'm not surprised. I mean, even though she didn't hide herself, there've been plenty of stories about her, but when you see a brand in department stores and Anthropologie and here, there, and everywhere, your expectation is not that it's a Black designer,
exactly.
unfortunately.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And that was part of the premise of the first exhibit, that we created store windows on a fictitious style avenue because these were people and names that you didn't normally see um, in the higher end stores. So we created our own stores and our own store windows, and each designer came in and literally designed their space the way they wanted to look, as if we were in some high end store.
Love that. And, one of the designers that you mentioned who you included, Stephen Burrows. Again, for those who don't know, and given that this is Black History Month, we'll give a little piece of history. Stephen was the only Black designer who participated in the Battle of Versailles, which was this incredible kind of it was a charitable event, but the French designers were kind of battling with the American designers. But it was the moment when American designers were taken seriously for the
Yeah,
first time in
yeah.
Europe. Stephen was the only African American designer. He went on to have Stephen Burrows World, a floor at Henry Bendel's. He had a big presence at Bergdorf's. This is
And he was
he
also the youngest. He was the
the
youngest designer as
right.
well.
That's right, and got a standing ovation.
Yes,
He and Stephen is still with us doing his thing. He was honored at FIT last year, I believe
yes.
it was, for all of his great work. And so over these 10 years, you didn't just stop to put a pause in the black dress until we get to this exhibition. You have done lots of activities to keep the conversation going, including something that you call conversations. So, what is the vision that you have had for the Black Dress exhibit, and how is it unfolded?
Well, after the first exhibit, it was very well received.
Mhm.
And so people kept asking us, we did it around the same time, Black History Month, Fashion Week. And people kept saying, "Oh, are you going to do this again?" So the plan was always to have another exhibit. Um, but it didn't happen like that. And one of my learning experiences for last year was everything happens in its time.
That's
So
it.
we had to find a way to build on it. And in 2015, one of my former students, she had actually been there the night before the opening. And she said, "I truly believe in what you're doing, and whatever you need, you just call me." And so the following year we got together, and she was like, "This is really important. We need to keep it going." So first we had to create the website. Um,
Mhm.
and it was really, it looks like um, there were at least 15 to 20 other people. It was just the two of us.
Wow.
It was just, and it's been just the two of us from 2015 until we did this exhibit.
And what is
We
her name?
her name is Rochelle Etienne Robinson, and she was a former
And
student.
she's partnering with you on this, co-curator, is that correct?
Yes, she is co-curator. She is a full partner in the Black Dress Project. And
Great.
you know, I so honored to have worked with both Paula and Walter. Um,
Mm.
but when that part was done, and Rochelle came and said, I'm in, I'm in." Where we are now could not have happened without her.
That's
So
beautiful. It's important to have support. I don't believe that you can do things fully alone. I really don't. I think that it is essential to work with other people, to have that brain space to bounce ideas off of each other, and just to learn and grow. So, and wasn't she your student?
yes, she was a former student of mine. She was as well as Sammy
Mm.
B. Um, so I've been fortunate enough to not only be in the classroom with these amazing, talented people, but after they graduate and still be a part of a community. Like I even know Sammy's mother, you know. So
That's
to be
great.
able to keep those people in my life has been nothing short of a blessing.
That's beautiful. Hey guys, this is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking fashion. We are talking with Dr. Adrienne Jones, who has made a wonderful exhibition. It is called the Black Dress Exhibit 2 Homage. And it's at, tell us where it is.
It's at Pratt Manhattan Gallery, 144 West 14th Street in Manhattan.
And how long will it be there?
It's up until March 22nd.
Excellent. And it's free to the public, correct?
Free to the public, open Monday through Saturday.
Great. So you have hosted a number of conversations, talks with people who have been in the industry for a long time. I think that these primarily have been at your Brooklyn campus. What
Yes.
is the vision behind these talks, and what are some of the talks that you've hosted?
So the talks actually came from interviews that we have been doing. This is COVID. And again, doing research and finding out about these amazing people. Um, so we Rochelle lives in Virginia, and she had been at some cultural event, and we came across this woman, Rosemary Miller, and she had
Mhm.
written a book, The Threads of Time. And she didn't just write a book, she was one of the first Black people to have a retail business in Washington, D.C., in an area where only whites had been allowed.
Wow.
And we thought she was such an amazing person. We contacted her, and I drove down to DC, and she invited us in our home into her home, and we were there all afternoon, where she pulled out photographs and books and fabrics that she had done from her store. We didn't know at the time that she was actually dying from cancer.
Mm.
So this was her last interview. That was in March of 2018. And unfortunately, we didn't have the footage ready before she passed away later that fall. But the idea of finding these hidden gems, these untold stories, and to be able to have them tell the stories in their own words, which I thought was so much more important than just writing a little bio based on what you heard or what you Googled. So we started that, and then of course, after that, um, I got Pratt one more time. It's like, we want to do this. We want to do this grand thing highlighting individual designers, and we call that Black Dress Salon. Now, to
Mm.
go back to the original exhibit, Um, every year, the fashion department has end of the year fashion show, which most schools do.
Sure.
And me and my big mouth, I said, you always honor designers, but you've never honored a Black designer.
Oh,
And this was the year of Black Dress Exhibit. Can we pull somebody out and honor them? So it ended up being Byron and Stephen.
oh, nice.
And at the time, they were giving, after the fashion show, they would have a big reception. And well, when they honored those two, again, the first Black designers that had been honored after a Pratt fashion show, it was the biggest turnout that they had seen, and they raised all this money. So
Fantastic.
2019, I was like, well, let's do this. And we actually had this event at uh, the Pratt House, which is where the president lives. And we had just been honored with the first female president of Pratt Institute.
Right.
So we totally took over the space. We had a jazz band, we had it fully catered. Um, Byron actually did his spring presentation as a fashion show. We got President Bronette to model. It was a big,
I
fabulous.
was there. I remember and it was jam packed. People
It
were
was
in
jam
the
packed
house.
with beautiful Black people.
Yes.
So again, here's another event. All the events that we've done have been highly successful. So I thought, okay, this is going to be a no-brainer. We're going to do this again. That was 2019, and then 2020 came, and so did COVID.
And the pandemic shut it all down.
Shut everything and everyone down. Um, so then we started doing interviews online, and our first Black Dress Talks was with a dear friend of mine, April Walker.
Hmm.
And for those of you who don't know, April
Yes, please
Walker
tell.
she's the first female who designed an urban clothing line successfully.
Right.
So she was in there. She was a protege of Dapper Dan, um, and she's still doing amazing things. I am
And
so
Walker Wear is her line, everybody. It's
Walker
called.
Wear is her life. Yes.
Mhm.
Um, so that went so. Oh, go ahead. I see you want to ask me
No,
a
no,
question.
I'm just thinking about it, just for folks to have some context. Again, this is Black History Month, so to make sure, for people, we're traveling down memory lane, but maybe not everybody knows
Yeah.
these stories. There was Dapper Dan is like the godfather of all of it in terms of the dapper style and then into hip hop. He predates hip hop and
Yes.
continues through hip hop. But hip hop, we had Carl Kanai, we had Fubu, we had what were some Cross Colors.
Cross
There were a lot of
colors.
brands.
Yeah. Academics. Um, wow.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Right. I'm
trying.
trying. I'm trying to go back in my head and think. Oh, of course, Fat Farm
Yep,
and
of
and
course,
Baby Fat.
and Baby Fat.
Um,
And
but
then
it
that was when the big sneaker brands got even bigger, with Nike and
right.
Adidas and, and when hip hop music was so big. When all of that was happening, just for context, for folks who are tuned in, April Walker stood out as the first woman to have a successful brand. There were a lot of successful brands. People were doing really well. Black people were doing really well, but not necessarily women. And she's still in the game today. So I just wanted
Yes.
to make sure people really have
Yes.
a sense of context for that. And if you didn't know about her, when you did this talk, you reopened the door for
Yes.
people to have awareness of her,
Yes.
which I think is great.
And it went so well that we weren't able to cover all the questions that everybody wanted to ask, and they were like, "Can you bring her back? Can you do more of this?" And
Right.
this was online. So later that year, in conversation with my chair and assistant chair of the fashion department, they were like, "Can we do this again?" And I said, "I want to do it again, but COVID, we have been cleared from COVID." And I said, "I would really like to do it live and in person."
Right.
And so in 2022, the chairperson at the time, she said to me, "Oh, listen, uh, we want to put some money in the budget, in the fashion budget for Black dress." And it was open for me to do whatever I wanted to do with
Mm,
it. So I
that's
said,
having
"Okay."
faith in you.
I said, "Okay, but send me an email because, you know, we all know if it's not on paper, it doesn't really exist."
That's right.
So that's where the Black Dress Talk started. And
Mm,
this must have been in like September of 22. And I said, I don't know how long this is going to last. The fashion department got a huge donation from the Jane B. Nord Professional Fashion Foundation. So the money was coming out of that. And I didn't know how long it was going to last. And I said, well, we got to get this done immediately. So I found out about it in September, and that first November, by November, I had everything set up. I was ready to go. And
right.
again, this was something that I carried with me always. So it
Mhm.
wasn't a matter of I had to sit down and think of what I wanted to do. It was just like, oh, I get to pull this out. Well, come on, let's do this.
Mhm.
And so the first talk was with stylists, and we had the amazing Susan Moses
Oh,
and
yeah.
and Tiffany Williams. Um, and that went over so well. And then we just started building on that. And the idea was by this time the website was thriving, and we had separated sections into the stylists and the models and the designers and the journalists. So we were just bringing people from each section that we could get a hold of to come and talk about their stories and their
Mhm.
triumphs and some of the backlash that they had received. But to give the students, one of the biggest things that pet peeves about teaching is that students don't want to do the research. They're very
Mm.
quick to pick up their phone and Google, but with our history, you don't always have a name in which to Google. But
True.
these were people who have stellar careers. I wasn't just finding my friend down the street and say, "Come on over and talk." And but but so that they would know, especially the Black and brown students on campus, that we have a history as well, not just
Mhm.
Black history, it's American history. So we would bring them in, and that started to grow. So we did models, uh, we did journalists, of which we were thrilled to have you as one of the panelists.
Thank
uh,
you.
we did costume designers, where we had Emilio Sosa and
Yep.
Paul Tazwell, who was flying high on the wings of Wicked. And what was interesting about that one, I wanted all students to come. This wasn't just for Black students, this was for all students.
Mhm.
Because again, a lot of the talks we had, these were people who were behind the scenes, so you never actually knew who they were. You might know the name. And I remember speaking to one of my students, and I said, "Are you coming to the event on Thursday?" And he says, "Well, I don't really know who anybody is, but the funny thing is, I want to be a costume designer." And I just, plucked him in the back of his neck. And I said, "You walk around with an encyclopedia in your pocket, AKA your phone, and you couldn't Google these people?" I was like, "Dude, you could be sitting next to right next to your next hire. This could be your next boss. Are you kidding me?" Because what we found out is more people from the industry. And Harriet, the Black fashion community is small. So
Yes.
you give us something, you feed us a little bit something, and they show up. So
Yes.
it's all these professional people who come out to listen to these talks, but I'm doing the talks for the students.
Right, but that is such a really good point, and, for folks for my show, Adrienne, I'm hoping that the people who are tuned in are looking to make their dreams come true. So as they listen to my guest stories, I'm listening for that spark that is gonna say, "Yep, this is what you need to hear." And what you just said that I think is so important, and I say it all the time, especially if I'm on stage speaking to an audience, look around you. Who is sitting
Yeah.
next to you, in front of you, behind you? Make sure you speak to them. Don't just rush the stage so fast to speak to who is on the dais, who is the keynote, because the person sitting right near you could have the key to unlock the door to something that you want to
Yes.
have happen in your life, but you have to pay attention.
Yeah, you do. And
And you are right, though your rooms are filled. I mean, like, for me as a veteran in this industry, it is so nice to see my peers and people who are of, subsequent generations there along with students, because it's good to also know what are people doing? What's happening in your world today? But for people who are launching, and by the way, launching happens at every age.
yes,
It's not just when you're 20s. People are launching and relaunching, but people who are in that transition space, it's wonderful to be in the company of people who are creating and doing and making things happen.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, I like I said, I hire students to work with me during the talks. We even started feeding people because we know that's always a pull for students and
Oh,
food.
yes.
And we actually there was one time that we took our student workers out to dinner and they got to sit with our speakers. I mean, I couldn't think of anything else to do. What else do I have to do to pull them in? Invite them to your house?
Whatever it takes, and I am
Whatever
sure
it
that
takes.
they certainly do appreciate that so much. And so how you've had quite a few talks over this period
Yes.
since you started doing
We
it.
just had we
Uh,
just had number 6 uh,
wow.
last week. Yeah.
And then there was, I don't know if you labeled it as such, but right before the opening of this new exhibition, you had a talk with Tonya Blasio, Licorice from WWD about her new book with her and her co-writer,
Yes,
Tara.
Tara Donaldson. Yes.
Right. And this was interesting. I do want to talk about this for a moment because I've interviewed Tonya. This book is encyclopedic. It
Absolutely.
and it's called Black in Fashion, and Tonya and Tara did a deep dive into 100 years of what Women's Wear Daily, which is considered the Bible of the fashion industry. It is the trade publication of the fashion industry in the United States, anyhow, and how Black people and talent have been documented in WWD over the past 100 years. Amazing. So many things to learn. We were proud to know that WWD had covered so fully, but
Yes.
also, right? That was a great thing to learn. And I'm so glad that you included her. Before you tell us about it, let me remind folks, this is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We're all in. I forget what time we are because we're just all in. We're talking with Dr. Adrienne Jones of Pratt Institute. She is the first Black female full-time tenured professor there, which I think is a great feather in her cap and something we can celebrate, especially now. And she has created a new exhibition. It is called the Black Dress Exhibit 2 Homage. So, let's talk a little bit about that book because even as you've done all this research, I mean, you had earmarked that book all over with notes and everything. What what is a key thing that you learned that is motivation for you moving forward as you continue this work?
Well, when I first, I want to say back in May, March or May of last year, I got
Mhm.
an email about the book. And the book was coming out in September. And you know how you can click on the book and it shows you a few pages. Well, one of the goals for Black Dress was to always provide a book. One of the things I said at that talk was there have been other exhibitions highlighting Black designers, but when the exhibition closed, the information went with it. So if you were somebody who was interested in any of this, you always had to start over at point A. So the goal has always been to write a book. And we had started, Rochelle and I had started putting the book together, but half of the book was photographs.
Wow.
And just for people who don't know, when you use photographs, it costs a lot of money, a whole lot of money. And so we kept, running around this way and figure, okay, eventually it will come. Well, when I got the information about Black in fashion, and I'm flipping through some of the pages online, this is before the book
Right.
came. I thought, oh my God, this is a book. This is the book that we always wanted to do. And immediately reached out to Tonya and Tara. And I said, listen, I'm doing this exhibition and and please would you come and speak? So I didn't find out until last week that when we contacted them, the book wasn't even finished yet. But that's how excited I was that someone had the foresight to sit down and go through all this. And when I spoke, Tonya and I, when we met for the first time, it was a full 4 or 5 hour conversation. I was like, girl, I
She's
have
that girl too. Look, she is an archivist. She's an academician. It's going strong. Wait, I need to switch because I want to make sure I get in what's in the exhibition that's currently up. Tell us what is there. What is part of this exhibition now?
So this current exhibition is the one I always wanted to do. And we now have the space and we got the budget to do it. And essentially what we did was take the website and bring it to life. So under the title of Black Dress, and I just need everybody to understand, it's not about the little black dress. It's about us as Black people and how we dress and why we dress the way we do and where it all comes from. So each section had a different name. For example, the section that Harriette is in, honoring journalists, is called Black Book. The designers.
And I was so surprised to see myself in there. Thank you.
Of course, of course. The designers, Black List. The models, Black Face. The hair and makeup people, Black Beauty. The stylist, Black Tie. And we had Black Star. These are the influencers, not necessarily designers, but people who have their own style. So we had everyone from a Diana Ross to a Coleman Domingo. And we also had Black Ground, which originally was just supposed to be for the people who design accessories, hats, shoes, and jewelry. And when it came to the jewelry section, we looked up a lot of the jewelry designers and just amazing pieces. And we said, well, they are never going to send us jewelry. So for them, we were just asking for photos of their jewelry. Well, we had such a huge response that we had to separate them from the other accessories and give them their own section, which is called Black Gold.
Amazing. It's something else.
It's an experience. And we also, you go to exhibits and you go to galleries and everything is do not touch. And you can't touch the clothing. But we have interactive things like we have a salon chair.
I know. I saw somebody sitting in that chair and I said, girl, you better get up. And then she said, look at the chair right there. You can sit there and take a picture.
We want you to sit there, and then behind it, which was supposed to act as like a mirror, are headshots of people in the hair and beauty industry. So you can sit in a chair, wait for your favorite person to come up and take the shot. We start the exhibit when you walk in the door. There's a huge basket of cotton, real cotton that comes from a 5th generation Black cotton farmer in North Carolina. Name of the company is Black Cotton. And we want you to see where all of this began, because at the exhibit on 14th Street, we're only blocks away from the beginnings of the New York garment district. And what a lot of people don't know is that cotton was shipped to New York to the garment district to make clothing for the enslaved and then shipped back south. So we wanted you to know where this began and how important this was to all of us.
It's so beautiful. So the exhibition is open until March 22nd, Monday through Friday, you said. What are the hours that it's open?
I believe it's open from 10, it's either 9 to 5 or 10 to 6.
Okay. Well, folks can check it out. And what is your website, Adrienne?
www.blackdressexhibit.com. We're under construction right now because we have to build in all of the information that we've got for this new exhibit. So it will be back up by the end of the month.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
You can still go see any of our interviews we have a YouTube channel, and that's just under Black Dress.
Excellent. Congratulations. And thank you for contributing so fully to documenting the experience of Black people in this very important industry. We thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, all of you, for tuning in. This is great. It's Black History Month. Enjoy it, soak it up, learn as much as you can, and check out this exhibit. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.